Some people don't ask music because they need help. They ask to see how much of you they can take. Have you ever noticed that the music more you give, the less you're respected? This is one of the hardest truths to accept, especially if you're kind, capable, and reliable. Music society teaches you that saying yes makes you good, generous, and strong. But Stoic music philosophy teaches something colder and far more honest. Not everything that is asked of you should be given. Music Marcus Aurelius warned that if you're not careful, other people's priorities will quietly replace your own. Not through force, not through cruelty, but through polite requests, emotional pressure, and subtle guilt. Some requests are music not innocent. They are tests of your boundaries, your self-respect, and your sense of worth. Asugan, the danger is this. Every time you give what should have been protected, you train people how to treat you. Today, we'll break down 5 things you should never give people, even if music they ask nicely. Because boundaries are not selfish. They are the music foundation of a calm, disciplined, and unbreakable life. 1. Rule 1. When time becomes a control test, never give them your time on demand. Time is not just hours on a clock. Time is your life in its rawest music form. Every minute you give away is a minute you will never recover. And yet this is the first thing people feel entitled to ask for. Not aggressively, not rudely, but casually, politely, as if your time music exists by default for their needs. Can you hop on a quick call? Just one small favor. It'll only take a minute. These requests rarely sound music dangerous. In fact, they sound reasonable. And that's exactly why they work. In modern music life, especially in work, family, and social circles, people test music boundaries through time. They don't start by asking for big sacrifices. Music they start by interrupting you, by assuming availability, by normalizing access. Over time, your schedule stops being yours. You become reactive instead of deliberate. And from a Stoic perspective, this is not a productivity issue. It's a self-respect issue. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should not allow your mind to be pulled in every direction by external demands. What he understood music and what most people miss is that whoever controls your time eventually controls your focus. Music your energy, and your priorities. When you give your time on demand, you silently teach others that your life is flexible but theirs is fixed. That their urgency matters more than your intention. That you are always adjustable. This is how resentment is born. You begin to feel drained, distracted, music and behind in your own life. Yet, you can't explain why. On the surface, you're just helping. Underneath, you're slowly abandoning your own goals to maintain other music people's comfort. A Stoic does not confuse kindness with availability. And being disciplined with your time does not make you selfish. It makes you sovereign. The Stoics' music believe that your primary duty is to live according to reason, not music according to interruptions. If something pulls you away from what truly matters, it deserves scrutiny, even if it comes wrapped in politeness. The key is not aggression. It is pause. Before you respond, stop, breathe. Ask yourself one quiet question. Is this aligned with how I choose to music live today? If the answer is no, you are not required to justify yourself. You don't owe long explanations. You don't owe emotional cushioning. You don't owe guilt-driven yeses. A simple, music calm boundary is enough. I can't right now. That doesn't music work for me. I'll get back to you later. Notice something important. People who respect you will adjust. People who benefit music from your lack of boundaries will resist. That resistance is information. Stoicism music teaches that not everything external deserves a response. Some things deserve music distance. When you stop being instantly available, you don't lose good relationships. Music you expose unhealthy ones. There is a quiet power in choosing when and how you give your time. It signals that music your life has direction. That your days are not open territory. That you are not drifting. And this is where the real shift happens. When you protect your time, you reclaim your music attention. When you reclaim your attention, you reclaim your agency. And when you reclaim your agency, you stop living at the mercy of other people's expectations. Music, remember this. Busy is not the problem. Lack of boundaries is your time is not a favor you owe the world. And it is music a resource you invest according to your values. Give it deliberately or others will spend it for you. Do. Never rule to. Emotional labor people take for free, give them emotional labor for free. Not all exhaustion comes from work. Some of it comes from carrying emotions that were never yours to hold. Emotional labor music is one of the most invisible things people take from you. There is no formal request, no clear transaction. It happens quietly through long conversations, repeated venting, and emotional dependence disguised as closeness. They don't ask, "Can I unload my emotional weight onto you?" Music, they say. "Can I talk for a second? I just need someone who music understands. You're the only one I can tell this to at first." It feels like trust, like intimacy, like music being needed. But over time, a pattern emerges. They talk, you listen, they release, you absorb, and when it's your turn to speak, the space is gone. Stoicism draws a clear line here. Music, you are responsible for your own inner state. You are not responsible for managing music, the emotional chaos of others. That doesn't mean indifference. It means discernment. The Stoics believed that what repeatedly enters music, the mind, shapes the character. If you constantly allow other people's anxiety, music anger, and confusion to flood your inner world, you slowly lose clarity. Your peace music erodes not because you are weak but because you have no filter. This is where many strong, capable people get trapped. They mistake emotional endurance for music virtue. They believe being there for everyone is proof of moral strength. But in music reality, unbounded emotional availability often comes from avoidance. Avoiding saying no. Avoiding discomfort. Avoiding the fear of being seen, music as cold or uncaring. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. What he implied is just as music important. We also suffer by proximity. By listening to the same unresolved problems music again and again, you begin to live inside someone else's mental loop. And loops don't move forward. Pay attention to music, these signs. You feel drained after talking to them. Not lighter. They rarely ask how you are, and when music they do, they don't stay long. Their problems never evolve, never resolve. Music never transform into action. They feel better after talking to you. You feel worse. Music, this is not connection. This is extraction. Stoicism teaches control of input as much as control of reaction. Just as you guard what you eat to protect your body, you must guard what you listen to in music order to protect your mind. You're allowed to limit emotional access. Means you can listen without absorbing. You can care without carrying. Music you can support without sacrificing your stability. Music, the Stoic response is not dramatic confrontation. It is measured adjustment. Shorter conversations. Clear limits. Redirecting responsibility back to them. Instead of fixing, you pause. Instead of rescuing, you reflect. Instead of absorbing, you return the weight. Sometimes that means saying, I'm not in the right space music for this right now. Sometimes it means changing the subject. Sometimes it means stepping back entirely. Music hears the truth most people won't tell you. Those who rely on your emotional labor will often resist your boundaries. Not because music they're evil, but because your availability has become part of their coping system. Music when you change. The system breaks and that music discomfort is not your fault. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you have power over your mind, not outside music events. Emotional labor for free hands that power away. Music it invites outside turbulence to dictate your inner weather. Stoicism does not demand that you harden your heart. It asks that you fortify it. Compassion without structure leads to burnout. Music empathy without limits leads to self-erasure. Your calm, music your clarity, your emotional steadiness. These are not infinite resources. They are the result of discipline, and discipline requires boundaries. If someone truly respects music they will adapt when you protect your energy. If they disappear when you stop carrying them, they were never music standing beside you to begin with. Remember this line because it matters. You are not responsible for regulating music emotions that others refuse to manage themselves. Offer presence and not absorption. Offer perspective, not sacrifice. Offer care, music not collapse. Because compassion that costs you your peace is not virtue. It is self-betrayal. Music rule 3. Who really controls your decisions? 3. Never give them access to your decisions. There is a subtle difference music between asking out of concern and asking out of control. And if you're not music paying attention, you will miss it. Some people don't want to help you decide. They want to be part of the decision because influence feels like power. It usually music starts softly. Are you sure that's a good idea? I'm just worried about you. If it were me, I'd do it differently. On the surface, these sound harmless, even caring. But over time, the questions don't stop. They follow every choice you make. Your career, your relationships, your lifestyle, music your pace of life. Slowly your decisions become group music discussions, and without realizing it, you start seeking permission instead of clarity. Stoicism draws a hard line here. Other people do not live with the consequences of your choices. None you do. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that no one else could think, choose, or act on his behalf. This was not arrogance. It was responsibility. A Stoic music understands that delegating your decisions, even emotionally, is a form of self-abandonment. When you give people access to your decisions, you give them access to your direction. And direction defines a life. Music many people ask questions not to understand you, but to steer music you. Sometimes toward what makes them comfortable. Sometimes toward what confirms their worldview. Sometimes music toward what keeps you close, predictable, and manageable. This is why unsolicited music advice is rarely neutral. It often comes wrapped in concern, but underneath is discomfort with your autonomy. Notice music the pattern. They question you more when you grow. They worry more when you change. And they advise more when your path doesn't resemble theirs. That's not guidance. That's friction with your independence. Stoicism music teaches that clarity comes from within through reason reflection, not from external consensus. Seeking endless music validation weakens judgment. It trains you to doubt yourself music before you act and to explain yourself after. An explanation is a trap. The more you explain your decisions, the more you music invite debate. The more you invite debate, the more you shift authority away from yourself. Eventually, you're no longer deciding. You're defending. A Stoic music does not defend his life choices in court. This does not mean rejecting all advice. It means choosing who gets access. There is a difference music between counsel and commentary. Counsel comes from those who understand music your values. Respect your agency. Zen accept your final say. Commentary music comes from those who feel entitled to an opinion simply because they are present. One strengthens you, the other dilutes you. Epictetus taught music that if you want to improve, you must be willing to appear foolish in the eyes of others. What he meant is this: when you stop needing approval, you stop shaping your life around music reactions. This is where many people struggle. They confuse peace with agreement. They confuse harmony with compliance. They confuse advice with authority. The Stoic response is calm, not confrontational. You don't argue. You don't persuade. You don't overshare. You answer briefly. You decide privately. You move forward quietly. I've thought music it through. This works for me. I'm comfortable with my choice. No debate. No defense. Watch what happens next. And those who respect you will accept your boundary even if they disagree. Those who relied on your openness to influence will push harder. That push reveals motive. Giving people access to your decisions teaches them that your life is negotiable. Taking that access back, music restores gravity to your choices. It signals that your path is not a public project. Stoicism music is not about isolation. It is about authorship. You can listen without obeying. You can consider without conceding. You can hear without handing over the wheel. Here is the truth most people learn to music late. Once you let others shape your decisions, you also let them shape your regrets. They will not carry those regrets with you. Your life is not a committee decision. It is a personal responsibility. Guard your choices the way you guard your time and energy. Not because you are superior, but because you are accountable. Advice becomes music control when it is forced. Autonomy becomes strength when it is protected. Choose carefully who gets a vote. And remember, the final decision is always yours. Never give them your rule for. Silence that slowly destroys dignity. Silence in music, the face of disrespect. Silence can be powerful, but silence can also be permission. Many people misunderstand this Stoic idea. They hear that Stoics value calm, restraint, and emotional control, and they translate that into enduring everything quietly. They believe staying silent makes them mature, unbothered, above the noise. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. The difference lies in choice. There is a dangerous kind of silence that has nothing to do with wisdom. It is the silence born from fear. Fear of conflict. Fear of being disliked. Fear of making things awkward. And when silence comes from fear, it doesn't preserve dignity. It erodes it. Disrespect rarely arrives loudly. It shows up as jokes that go a little too far. Comments that subtly diminish you. Sarcasm disguised as humor. Passive-aggressive remarks that leave you questioning whether you imagined it. And because it's subtle, you hesitate. You tell yourself, it's not worth it. Maybe they didn't mind it. I'll just let it slide. That hesitation is the opening. Stoicism does not teach submission. It teaches self-calm. Marcus Aurelius spoke often about maintaining inner calm, but he never advocated allowing your character to be chipped away for the sake of comfort. Here is the hard truth. When you stay silent in the face of repeated disrespect, you're not keeping the peace. You're teaching people how to treat you. Disrespect thrives on ambiguity. When nothing is said, the other person fills in the blank. They assume acceptance or weakness or indifference. Rarely do they assume restraint. And once a line is crossed without consequence, it is crossed again. This is where many disciplined, thoughtful people struggle the most. They are not reactive by nature. They don't want drama. They don't want to stoop to that level. So they endure and music endure until endurance turns into quiet resentment. Stoicism warns against this internal corrosion. Anger held music inward does not disappear. It hardens. It distorts music judgment. It turns calm into bitterness. The Stoic solution is not explosive confrontation. It is measured clarity. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to insult. You don't need to winches. You need to name the behavior calmly, briefly, without emotion. That comment wasn't necessary. I don't appreciate being spoken to that way. Let's keep this respectful. That's it. Music, no lecture. No explanation. No emotional charge. This kind of music response does something powerful. It removes confusion. It draws a clear line between what is acceptable and what is not. And music forces the other person to confront their behavior instead of hiding behind tone or humor. Epictetus' music taught that we cannot control how others act, but we can control what we tolerate. Tolerance music is a choice, and when tolerance becomes habitual in the face of disrespect, it becomes music self-neglect. There is also an important distinction to make. Silence chosen from strength is music strategic. Silence chosen from fear is costly. A Stoic may choose music silence when engagement would only fuel chaos. When the other person seeks reaction, attention, or escalation. In those moments, silence is withdrawal of energy. But when silence allows disrespect to music repeat, silence is no longer strategy. It is surrender. And surrender always has a price. Pay attention to how people respond when you calmly assert a boundary. Those with self-awareness will adjust. Those with respect will apologize. Those who relied on your silence will resist, deflect, or mock. Music, that reaction tells you everything. Stoicism is not about being liked. It is about living in alignment with music, reason, and self-respect. And self-respect requires action when lines are crossed. This does not make you aggressive. It makes you grounded. You're allowed to be calm and firm at the same time. You're allowed to be composed and clear. You're allowed to protect your dignity without emotional chaos. Remember this. Peace that depends on self-erasure is not peace. It is avoidance. True inner calm comes from knowing that you will stand up for yourself when it matters, without losing control, without losing character. Silence music is powerful only when it is chosen. When it is forced, it becomes weakness. Music, do not confuse endurance with virtue. Do not confuse politeness with music self-respect. Speak when a boundary is crossed. Step back when the pattern continues. And walk away when respect is no longer present. Because silence should never cost you your dignity. And a Stoic never trades self-respect music for temporary comfort. 5. Never give Rule 5. Why second chances have limits them unlimited. Second chances. Forgiveness is often praised as strength, but unlimited forgiveness is often misunderstood as virtue. Stoicism music makes a careful distinction here, one that many people ignore to their own detriment. To forgive is human. To keep exposing yourself to the same harm is not noble. It is negligent. Some people music don't change because they are forgiven. They repeat because they are allowed. It usually sounds sincere at first. I didn't mean it. I promise it won't happen again. I was music just going through a hard time. And because you are reasonable, empathetic, and fair, you give them another chance. Music, then another, then another. Each time believing this will be the moment things improve. But improvement never comes. Only repetition. Stoicism teaches a simple but uncomfortable truth. Character is revealed through patterns, not promises. Words are easy. Apologies, music are easy. Change is not. Marcus Aurelius warned against expecting music people to act against their nature. Not out of cynicism, but out of clarity. When someone shows you who they are consistently, the Stoic music response is not hope. It is adjustment. Unlimited second music chance quietly destroys self-respect. Each time you excuse the same behavior, you send a message not just to them, but to yourself. You tell yourself that your boundaries music are flexible, that your pain is negotiable, that consistency matters less than intention. And over time, something shifts inside you. You become hesitant. You become guarded. You become music smaller around them. Not because they are powerful, but because you are constantly bracing music for disappointment. Stoicism is not cruel. It is precise. It does not demand revenge. It does not demand punishment. It demands realism. A Stoic does not cut people off at the first mistake. But a Stoic also does not confuse mercy with blindness. There is a point where patience stops being wisdom, music, and starts being self-harm. Here is the critical question Stoicism asks. Has the behavior changed, or has the apology simply become more polished? Look closely. Do their actions align with their words? Do they take responsibility without deflection? Do they make measurable adjustments over time? Or do they reset the cycle? Music harm, apology, relief, repeat. That cycle is not accidental. It is a system that only works if you keep participating. Seneca wrote that we suffer more often than necessary because we fail to learn from experience. In the context of relationships, that suffering comes from ignoring evidence in favor of hope. Hope feels generous. Distance music feels cold. But Stoicism reminds us that distance can be an act of self-respect. Forgiveness does not require music continued access. Understanding does not require continued exposure. You can release resentment without music reopening the door. This is where many people struggle. They believe walking away makes them harsh, unforgiving, or morally inferior. But Stoicism music rejects this emotional blackmail. Your duty is not to preserve every connection. Your duty is to preserve your character and peace. The Stoic response music to repeated harm is not anger. It is withdrawal. Quiet, calm, vinyl. No announcements. Music, no dramatic exits. No long explanations. Just distance. Distance is not punishment. It is protection. When you stop giving unlimited chances, something powerful music happens. You regain stability. You regain clarity. You regain the ability music to trust yourself again. And you stop living in anticipation of disappointment. Pay attention to how people music respond when chances end. Those who truly valued you will reflect. Those who relied on your tolerance will accuse. Those who benefited from your forgiveness will panic. None of those reactions require a response. Stoicism teaches music that you are not responsible for how others feel about your boundaries. You're responsible for maintaining them. Unlimited chances music teach people that consequences are optional. Limited access teaches people that respect is required. And here is the final truth. One that music is difficult but freeing. Some people only learn when access is removed. Some people never learn at all. In both cases, your role is the same. Step back. You're not obligated to stay in situations that repeatedly violate your values. You're not obligated to sacrifice peace for history. And you are not obligated to keep reopening wounds to prove you are kind. Kindness without discernment is not virtue. It is vulnerability without armor. Stoicism does not harden you. It sharpens you. Forgive once. Observe carefully. And if the pattern continues, choose distance without guilt. Because the most self-respecting response is sometimes the quietest one. And distance when chosen deliberately is not abandonment. It is wisdom. Today we've walked through choose boundaries. Choose calm strength, 5 things you should never give people even when they ask politely. Not your time on demand. Not your emotional labor for free. Not control over your decisions. Not silence in the face of disrespect. And not unlimited second chances. These are not rules to make you cold. They are principles meant to make you clear. Stoicism was never about isolating yourself from others. It was about refusing to abandon yourself in order to be accepted. When you protect these 5 areas, you don't lose your humanity. You reclaim your authority. You stop living reactively. You stop negotiating your worth and you start moving through life with calm. Deliberate strength. Now comes the most important part. Practice. Choose just one boundary from this video and apply it this week. Pause before you say yes. You'll shorten a conversation that drains you. Decide without explaining. Speak once when a line is crossed or step back from a pattern that has already shown you the truth. Small actions done consistently change how people treat you, and more importantly, how you treat yourself. If this video resonated with you, take a moment to reflect and comment one line below. I choose self-respect. It's a commitment, not just a sentence. Thank you for spending this time here, for thinking deeply, and for choosing growth over comfort. If you want more Stoic insights on boundaries, discipline, and inner strength, subscribe and stay with us. Until next time, walk your path calmly, firmly, and without apology.